Do you need a photography studio to be a photographer? Now, bear with me. I know some of you are thinking, yeah, but I shoot weddings or I do location work only. This is still relevant to you in some ways. Maybe not studio, maybe more office, but hear me out here. I'm going to go through some of the reasons why getting a studio is perhaps the best thing you can ever do, and it is the single best thing I did for my career. Now, I get this question asked quite a lot, like when is it time to get a studio? When are you ready to get a studio? First of all, let me tell you what I did. I quit my job and got a studio straight away, off the bat. It was a huge mistake. I had, I think, 28 days in a particular month I started renting to make enough money to pay the rent for my house, the rent for my studio, and all my bills. Because being an idiot, I didn't have any savings. I just went in gung-ho like, this will be fine. And it was fine, but there were sleepless nights, let me tell you. So what should we take into consideration when looking at a studio? First of all is, where do you work and where can you work? Now, obviously I have a house, but in the house is my partner, my cat, 3 children. It's not particularly conducive to work. So even if it's an email only day, I will come into my studio and go into the office behind here, and that's where I'll sit and do my work. I cannot work from home. I can't do these videos from home because it's too loud. You'd have children literally running through frame, and it's not fair on my partner to ask her to be quiet when the kids aren't there, because why should she have to be quiet so I can make videos? It doesn't add up. So it's important for me to have my own working space for this. When I'm editing all these little bits, I need my space. Now, some people work in cafes and they enjoy that. I sometimes do that if I'm writing, but to be honest, I like to have a dedicated workspace and I like going to work. Part of what I enjoy doing is coming here, doing my work, and then closing the door at the end of the day. And that's my switch off. Whereas I feel that if I worked from home, regardless of shooting, just doing the admin, the editing and all this sort of stuff, there'd be no off switch. Like when I leave here for the day, I'm not doing any work once I get home. I'm not going to sit on the settee tonight and edit this, hopefully. But, you know, it's nice to have that option of a hard cut-off, as in we're leaving work, the work's there, let's go. Now, alongside this, you'll probably notice behind me are some massive paper rolls. They can fit in my house, not particularly well. They kind of fit in my car if I poke them out of a window and sort of hang tight, but it's not a safe way to transport them. I can't fit the big lights in my house. There's so much of the stuff that I have that I can't store in my house because it's big, and I need a workshop, I need an editing suite, I need a shooting space, a kitchen. We've got a kitchen at home, but my partner has a baking from home business, so I can't be shooting while she's baking and all the rest of it. So I need somewhere to store my stuff, my props, all that sort of thing, all the kit, the computers and all that stuff. They get stored here. It is far more secure in my studio than it is in my house. My house is not unsecure. But there's places like Fort Knox, there's like alarms and cameras and codes and locks, and it's just, I've locked myself in here several times in the past simply because there were so many locks and I've left one key somewhere, shut a door behind me, and anyway, I digress. I need somewhere to keep my stuff, and if you're getting to that point where you're like, good Lord, where's my kit going to be going? It's not very secure in the house here, people know it's here and all the rest of it, maybe that's a good reason to look into having at least an office space. And then for me, one of the great things of having a studio is being able to do this when I want. It's Sunday, what time is it? It's 3:30 p.m. I've got a bit of a space. I'm going to do this work here. I don't have to worry about it. And if I want to do a test shoot, I don't have to worry about finding a space to shoot. And if it's raining outside, if I was a portrait photographer, I've got an indoor space, which is actually part of the reason I decided to get a studio in the first place, because I live in England. Shooting on location is a nightmare. Now, obviously this is all nice and, very luxurious having these options here, but it costs money. Running a studio can be very expensive. If you're watching this from New York or London, you're probably thinking, yeah, it's going to cost me $4,000 a month. That's not going to happen. Obviously where I live in Leicester, it is considerably cheaper, which is great, but it still has a cost, and, it all adds up by the time you've got lights on all the time, and you're cooking for 12 hours a day, whatever it may be. All these electric bills and business rates and all this sort of stuff adds up. So you need to look at it from a business point of view as well, if it isn't just a hobby. So for me, to rent a studio in Leicester is not an option. There is no rental space for a commercial photographer who shoots food. I think I'm the only studio with a kitchen and a prop house around this area, maybe even going into Nottingham. So that for me means it's almost, I have to have this space. It's also that a day rate of renting the studio is between $200 and $400 a day. I shoot regularly. If I had to rent them, it'd probably cost me somewhere in the region of £10,000 a month in studio rentals. And I don't have that sort of money as a profit margin to eat into for that. So having my own space saves me money. So if you start looking at how much you're spending on rentals to do the shoots you need a studio for, and then look at the cost of a studio, you'll probably find they're quite comparable. And another big factor is that even if these two costs are comparable, can you do more work when you have a studio? Now, I get comments on my studio floor all the time. It's disgusting. There's paint everywhere. There's plaster spilled on it. I need to be able to create things in this space, and that lets me do more work and create more work. And having this freedom and space to create gets me more money. Having a studio makes me money because I can shoot more and create more. And even though it's not must-do jobs, next week I'm doing a test shoot. I can do a test shoot whenever I want because I have my own space. And that in turn gets me better work. My abilities progress and progress. And the studio is worth far more to me than a camera. I'd rather downgrade my camera to something far cheaper and have a studio than not have a studio and have a Hasselblad. And then the final factor I think you should consider is that the building itself can be a source of income. You can do rentals. You can rent it out when you're not using it. You can have hot desks, although I don't think you're legally allowed those in the UK right now because of coronavirus. But there's all these different things that you can do which will allow you to make more income from the space. So although it might be costing you, say, $2,000 a month, if you can recoup $1,500 of that, from extra activities that you couldn't do before, hosting workshops, renting desk space, renting the studio out, all of these things, then you're only paying the £500 extra to have the studio. And if that's less than your rental cost anyway, you're winning. So it's a win-win situation. It is scary and it is stressful when you go for your first studio space because you don't know how it's going to pan out. And having that monthly big bill coming in, it can be a real stress. And, there's the unglamorous side of it as well. I'm going to be sweeping and mopping tonight because we're shooting tomorrow. That's not cool. That's not sexy photographer times, but I can't get a cleaner in on a Sunday and I've made a mess. So what am I going to do? I've got to clean, I've got to mop, I've got to hoover, all that boring stuff. And it's not glamorous. And then I've got to sort things out like the council tax, the electric bills, all these little things. It's like extra life admin. And it does take time. So it's worth considering that if you're one of these people who's just absolutely slammed already. There are different things that just add up in the time sort of eating ways. And it can become a bit laborious. I try and outsource as much of it as I can, but then even the outsourcing does take time. So I hope that's helped you sort of come up with an idea as to whether you need a studio or not and whether it's right for you. I mean, the good thing about these things is if you've managed to save up 6 months studio rent, take out a 6-month lease, and if it doesn't work out, you're not going to go bankrupt because it's money you already had in the bank. So taking risk is scary, but I always think that opportunity grows when you take risk. You don't get opportunities if you don't take the risks. If I hadn't have taken that first studio on, despite the fact I couldn't afford month number 2's rent, I wouldn't be where I am today because I wouldn't have had the opportunities to create at the rate that I could do, have my own studio and being in there 12 hours a day for the first few years of work. If you're liking these videos, do hit subscribe, do share them with your friends. I'll see you next time.